welcome to a special edition of Crawford County Outdoors. I'm Dwayne Kohler, and I'm joined by Brenda Costa from the French Creek Valley Conservancy. Brenda, something's happened here recently. Can you talk about it, please?
Big news, big news. French Creek has been named the 2022 Pennsylvania River of the Year. And we are really excited about this.
That's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
I remember hearing about the you can vote for a certain river several years back or whatever. And then, so this year it was French Creek versus the Monongahela River.
That's right.
And the Monongahela River probably has 2 or 3 million people that live along the Monongahela River and the counties close by or whatever. French Creek's probably not even 1/10 of that, I wouldn't think.
Yeah.
But people voted for French Creek.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about that for a second. I mean, to me that's a wonderful thing. But I'm not stunned. I mean, I people love the creek. They live around here.
Right. Yeah. So we had to nominate. We submitted ourselves for nomination, and I really felt like we could win this. I felt like so many people love French Creek and they would be excited about this. And we got out and we put up signs and we had a QR code people could scan to vote. And we just wanted to get people excited about the contest, and they turned out and voted for us. So we were just really thrilled.
Now, if I saw a count of the vote, French Creek had almost like twice as many votes as the Monongahela River, right?
Yeah, about 49% of the votes of the entire contest. More than 6,000 people.
There were a few other ones that I didn't even recognize the names of the waterways that were in the contest also. But
the Catawissa and the Connoquenessing were the other two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe have heard those, but I wouldn't even know where to go to find those ones. But so give a general talk about French Creek. I mean, the people around here on the way to work, probably every day or at least once a week or whatever, they cross over the creek, and those of us who love to get on the water and paddle and all that kind of stuff, it's like, it's frozen over, whatever. Yeah, right now it's frozen over, but talk in general kind of about French Creek, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, French Creek is kind of known by two different groups of people. We have people who know it by its biodiversity and all of the interesting creatures you will find in French Creek and its value in nature.
Who's that?
And that's the Eastern Hellbender. We'll talk about him a little more in a minute.
Okay.
But then there's the group that, as you said, recreate. People are from the area and they drive over a bridge every day and they see it and maybe don't really know the value and how special French Creek is. We want everybody to understand both of those sides.
When I first heard about this, selecting the River of the Year, this was probably 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. I own some property in Warren County, and the back of my property is the Conewago Creek. Mm-hmm. And the Conewago Creek was picked as the River of the Year of Pennsylvania. I'm thinking, now why would that be? It's only, I think there's like 9 miles of it that's actually in the state. It drains Chautauqua Lake down to the Allegheny River. Mm-hmm. And a very small part of it, it is in Pennsylvania. Most of it's in New York State. So that's when I first learned about this whole thing is, we're going to pick a River of the Year. When I heard that French Creek was, and I said, that was really exciting. So, 10 miles versus French Creek it's like 100 miles,
it's
right?
117 miles. It flows from the headwaters in Chautauqua County, New York, and then it flows all the way to the Allegheny River at the city of Franklin. But that was one of the exciting things about voting. We reached out to people in New York State. You could be from anywhere and vote for this contest as long as you had an email address. So we got people in the headwaters to vote as well.
I remember when I was, when my kids were little, they're now in their 30s, but we would be driving up to the mall for them to, go shopping for Christmas or whatever. And when we come to that golf course on Route 19, and I forget the name of it there, but it's right at Summit Township, and I would say to the kids, now if a raindrop fell right here, it's like it might go this way and get into French Creek and go and get in the Allegheny River and get in the Ohio River and get in the Mississippi River and go to the Gulf of Mexico. If it falls and rolls the other way, it goes into Lake Erie and over Niagara Falls, and so they, it was always a big conversation with my kids about that.
Yeah.
Is that a dumb thing, or is that? I mean, am I right about that?
No, it's important to talk about. We want people to protect the headwaters of French Creek, but French Creek is really the headwaters of the Mississippi River. All the water that flows past us here in Meadville and in the French Creek watershed flows downstream in this network of rivers, and so what we do here impacts all the people downstream as well.
So it's like. French Creek really is unique. I mean, it's very unusual. Back in the days before the glaciers came, 10,000 plus years ago, whatever. Didn't it go the other direction? Didn't it flow into Lake Erie?
Yes, yeah. French Creek originally seems to have flowed into Lake Erie, and over the millions of years of glaciers coming back and forth, It eventually, its path was blocked and changed direction and then started flowing south.
And that makes a unique nature because it had kind of like creatures and things from both sides, right? I mean, and they're different. I mean,
Yeah, and it's actually three areas that kind of come together. The original headwaters of that older French Creek was further to the east from here. So that's how we have the incredible biodiversity that we have, because you have collect species from these three different habitats.
I see when I travel and cross over bridges, there's French Creek, a community treasure, and it's a unique thing, but it really is a community treasure. I mean, it's something that just the story you just told. That's just not a story that's anywhere else that I know of around here.
Right. I mean, we have that story of the biodiversity. We have the colonial history. George Washington is actually the person that named French Creek.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Can we talk some history?
Yeah, we can talk some history. So George Washington was sent to the area by Governor Dinwiddie from Virginia in 1753. Came to the area as a young surveyor, and he decided to name this body of water French Creek. His mission was to eject the French from Fort Le Boeuf.
Now the deal was way back then was France had everything above the Great Lakes and England had everything below the Great Lakes, right?
Yeah,
and France broke the deal. They didn't follow their end of the deal.
Right. So George Washington was trying to get them out of this area, but I don't know why you name a creek after your enemies, but he did. So that's what we've got. But there's also a really rich Native American history too. To this area. This was a really treasured hunting ground for Native Americans, and we now are just digging into some more of that Native history to understand that.
So French Creek covers, if you look at Crawford County map, I mean, there's the Oil Creek, river that kind of covers the east side. There's Pymatuming, that covers the west side. But French Creek is like the watershed for maybe 2/3 of the county, something like that?
Yeah, the majority of Crawford County is part of the French Creek watershed. And it's interesting because people don't realize that they are part of the watershed. There are portions where you could be about 17, 18 miles away from French Creek and you're still within the French Creek watershed. So we really try to get people to understand how large the watershed is.
Why does that matter? I mean, throw that out there. But
Yeah, again, I mean, talking about the headwaters, we're also concerned about tributaries. Any water that's flowing into the main stem of French Creek can affect the water quality, can affect the habitat for things like the hellbenders. So it's important for us to protect all of those tributaries as well.
I remember as I was paddling, I think with you and with Brian Pilarczyk, and I think with Professor from Allegheny, every time we talked about when you're fertilizing your lawn, if you overdo that, and again, you're 2/3 of Crawford County, that's going to end up in the creek, and that's going to be a problem. I mean, talk about that for a sec.
That's right. Probably the two biggest threats to French Creek are that sort of nutrient loading where you've put fertilizer on crops or on your lawn and that gets washed into French Creek. That definitely upsets
so don't overdo
the water quality.
Don't overdo it with that.
Yeah, don't overdo it. But also a lot of sediment. When the water looks like chocolate milk and there's a lot of particles flowing through French Creek, then things like hellbenders that breathe through their skin have a hard time breathing. And so having that muddied water really affects the habitats as well.
So the muddied water part comes from cutting down too many trees that are actually holding back the water and that kind of...
Yeah.
Am I right about that?
Yeah.
Is there other things too I need to think about when I'm managing my property?
Sometimes it is from stormwater. When we have these really strong rain events or excessive precipitation that can wash sediment into French Creek. But as you said, the trees... That's the riparian buffer. That's the plants along the bank of the creek. Those are really, really important areas because they stabilize the bank so that it doesn't fall into the creek and erode, but it also acts as a filter to prevent other sediment and materials from going into the creek.
Are there things I need to worry about now? We're talking when I'm out paddling around or whatever. Yeah. And the last time we did our trip, it was very muddy because we had a big rainstorm the day before. Yeah. But we'd already scheduled and we had everybody's time available, so we still had to go on the muddy day. When we're now in the winter time and I think there's probably 20 inches of snow in my yard or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anything in particular about that kind of stuff that I need to be cautious about?
Probably the biggest issue this time of year is excessive use of salt. you can walk around some places and it looks like rock candy on the sidewalk.
Right.
And all of that excessive salt gets washed off into our storm sewers and discharges into French Creek. And that is the largest issue, I think, in the winter about protecting French
So
Creek.
now that's gonna make an issue for the animals that for the animals, fish, everything that live in the creek.
Yeah. I mean, that increased concentration of salt can definitely impact wildlife.
Okay. So yes, you need to salt your sidewalk, but not
Just enough.
but not a mountain's worth of salt. And
That's right.
I
That's
noticed
right.
that the salt truck had come down my street the other day, and it must have hit a bump or something, and there was a big pile of salt. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, and a lot of people don't think about that, but all of that will eventually wash away and wash into French Creek.
Okay. Talk about this guy for a sec here.
So this is the eastern hellbender. It's the second largest species of salamander in the world and the largest in North America. And the hellbender was recently named the official Pennsylvania state amphibian. Such a cool creature.
That's neat.
This is real size. This is a model, but they can grow to be this large. I have seen a hellbender this size in French Creek. They are protected species. You are not allowed to harm, harass, or disturb hellbenders. You really need a special scientific permit in order to do that. We hear of people catching them fishing sometimes, and if you can kindly let them go back to where they were, they don't want to see you. You might be curious about seeing them, but they don't want to see you. But as I said before, they breathe through their skin. They have a lot of excess skin, so they can absorb more oxygen. But
So
because of that,
when the water isn't water, when it's mud, that makes an issue for these guys.
it does. It needs to be clean, moving water for them to breathe. But the other issue with the muddy water is they live under flat, large rocks. And so if a lot of mud and sediment builds up under those rocks, then it affects their dens.
I've probably, I couldn't even tell you exactly, probably 100 times I've been either canoeing or kayaking or whatever on front. I've never seen one. I mean, is that weird, or is that?
No, I mean, they really don't want you to see them.
Okay.
They have these long, flat bodies so they can fit into these crevices under the rocks. They're completely aquatic, so you would never see one out climbing on rocks or on the bank. And they are largely nocturnal, so it is unlikely that you would see one. And people really frequently confuse these with mud puppies. We hear people call them mud puppies quite often, and that's a totally different species. That is not the same animal. If you see a mud puppy, it has probably red gills. It has a more triangular shaped head. But a lot of confusion between the two species.
Now, one thing I have seen lots of times going down the creek is bald eagles and other kinds of large birds and things.
Yes.
Am I the only one that ever sees those? Or?
No, I was keeping a tally, and I think every time I've been on French Creek, except for one time, I have seen a bald eagle. And that's amazing to me. There are people in our country who will never see our national bird in their lifetime, and I see one every time.
So get a canoe and go down the creek and
That's
you'll see
right.
one. Okay.
That's right. But then you'll also see a lot of herons. There's secret heron rookery that there's lots of herons there, and you can see all different species of birds. There's actually 4 Audubon designated important bird areas throughout the French Creek watershed. So there's a tremendous amount of bird population and diversity here.
I don't remember if I told you the story before, but I was paddling, I think from Segertown to Meadville. This was a number of years ago. And here comes a deer, jumps in the water and looks at me, and I think I spooked it, and it goes back up on the bank. And then it ran down a little bit and jumped back in the water and sees me again. So after about 3 or 4 times of this, it swam all the way across and came out of the water. It's like, okay. And then went up. So, I didn't think the deer would be jumping in the creek like that and swimming across, but I actually witnessed it happening. And it was like, I don't know if I spooked it in the first place, but I know I spooked it and ran down the creek several times before it went across. Am I the only one that's ever seen a deer cross?
No. Well, I've seen deer before. The one creature that I hear a lot about that I have not seen is an otter. I hear a lot of people talking about seeing otters, and there definitely are river otters in French Creek. I've just not seen one.
Okay, so are there going to be like events celebrating this River of the Year thing, or what's going to happen? What's
There
gonna happen?
are. We've made a pretty active calendar of events
Oh,
for
that's
this
great.
year.
That's great.
This is also French Creek Valley Conservancy's 40th anniversary, so
Oh,
we
wow.
were
How
planning
about
to
that?
really celebrate that as well. But we have a online film event coming up in February. We have some property walks on some of our conserved properties. We're going to have at least 2 paddling events. We're trying to schedule a river snorkeling event, which
Oh,
I think
wow.
would be really cool to be able to
Interesting, yeah.
see under the water. So we're trying to have events that don't just appeal to paddlers. We want everybody to celebrate French Creek.
Now this is my thing. So it's like if you go to paddle in, say, July or August, you're probably going to end up having to walk half the time. Is the paddling event going to be more like a May or June thing, or maybe even a
Yes.
September thing? Because September the water comes back up a little bit. But
Yeah, so our annual summer sojourn is actually held in June. So it's June 11th this year. We'll be out on the water. And that'll be a big day to celebrate because Secretary Dunn from the DCNR will come to that event. To unveil the River of the Year poster for French Creek. And so
that's
that'll
great.
be a big deal.
is that going to live here? Is that where that poster's going to live? Or-
We will have a copy, but then
Nice,
there will
okay.
be a copy that stays in Harrisburg. So
Now, in the fall, I brought along a T-shirt, and I think I have like 12 of these or something like that, because I organized a group for many years. I cleaned the creek for the hellbender of it. So there's a cleaning day. Talk about that for a
there
second, if you
is.
would.
So we have our French Creek cleanup every year in September, and this year is our 29th French Creek cleanup.
Wow.
It's just a feel-good day, but we get a lot of work done. We've been having more than 500 volunteers come out the last few years to help us clean up. The good news is that we're finding less and less garbage. We're sending teams out to help us clean up that day, and we're finding less garbage. So we've actually started doing some stewardship events on cleanup day as well. Last year we planted about 350 trees between a couple
Wow.
of teams to improve the riparian areas on some of our conserved properties. So it's a fantastic volunteer day and a lot of fun.
I think it might even have been the first time or the second time that I was organizing a group and we all brought canoes and stuff and we went down the creek. We got in by the Ernst farm there and went down. We found a vehicle in the creek. And so, I mean, I had the radiator and somebody else had a tire and somebody else had, and the steering wheel, and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. It's like somebody's dumped their motor vehicle. Yeah, obviously it must have been worn out and, let's just get rid of it and throw it in the creek, which is not the right thing to do.
It is not, and unfortunately, we find some things every year. We find a collection of shopping carts. We get a number of tires brought in, but overall, we have seen a real improvement in cleanup in the
That's what I was
creek.
gonna.
So,
That's what I was
yeah.
gonna say, because I know as the years went by with the group that I had, that people just loved it. And it seemed like it got a bigger group each year, and we moved upstream and we got kind of onto some of the streams that flow into French Creek, and we're finding stuff like washing machines that people dump them down the ravine, and
Yeah.
we'll get rid of it, and stuff like and shopping carts as you mentioned,
Yeah.
lots of things like that it's like I'm gonna take the shopping cart from the grocery store and wheel it home and then just throw it over the ravine. That's that doesn't seem like a good thing to do. But
No, it doesn't. And when we find those, we try to return them to the stores. But at this point, a washing machine, you better take it in and get the money for the metal. So that would be a better choice.
One year we did what's the creek that runs underneath town, and it's half the
Mill
west
Run.
house. We did Mill Run, and I think we fished 4 shopping carts out of Mill Run
I bet.
that year, and
Yeah.
that was probably 8 or 10 years ago, something like that. But yeah, that was the kind of moved away from French Creek and moved into the things that flow into French Creek, and we're finding all kinds of stuff. And is that I mean, still that's part of the French Creek waterway, right?
It is, yeah. And we have been sending teams into different tributaries and a little further away from the main stem of French Creek because it's really important to clean up those areas as well.
Okay. So let's have a summary of the whole thing here.
So, River of the Year, and we're also celebrating our 40th anniversary, but we're going to have a lot of public events. We'll have at least one event a month, and we are so thankful for the more than 6,000 people that voted for us, and we're hoping that all of those people can join us to celebrate French Creek this year.
Well, let me know. I'll put them on our Crawford County Outdoors Facebook page, and we'll let folks, all of our, we've got a lot of folks that follow that. We'll get them involved as much as we can. So
Great.
And congratulations, Brenda.
Thank you so
for
much.
The River of the Year for Pennsylvania.
Thank you.
So a community treasure. So, okay, Chef Lisa's going to join us next. Joining us now, Chef Lisa Beck. So Lisa, the French Creek, the community treasure. I mean, there are so many cool things about the creek or whatever. So
Yes.
one thing that we're not doing today is we're not cooking a mud puppy. We're not cooking a hellbender.
No hellbender salamanders.
Okay,
Absolutely not. I believe they're protected. No
There was one sitting on the table when we were doing the interview the
Oh
whole
yeah,
time. So.
they are pretty cool. They really
So
are.
I've been on that creek probably 100. I've never seen one. I guess they always hide under rocks and all that
They're
kind of stuff.
nocturnal. You find them at night. And then the only reason I know that, and I know a few things about it, is because in my former career, I taught about French Creek. 119 miles, 114, 119 miles from where it starts in French Creek, New York, all the way to the Allegheny River in Franklin.
Just amazing.
It is. There's so many facts about it that are fascinating. I mean,
One of my favorite things is the other competitor for the River of the Year
Right.
was the Monongahela, and there's got to be 1 million people or more that live along the Monongahela.
Right.
Everybody voted for French Creek. They didn't vote for the Monongahela River.
because it should have been the River of the Year, the Creek of the Year. It should have
Yeah,
been because people don't realize, and I'm sure when you were doing all of your investigating, how clean it really is.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and we know that
Oh,
because
yeah.
of the species that live in French Creek. It's a fascinating thing. I mean, if you haven't, obviously you're watching the show, so you're learning more today, but any research you can do in that, you will be fascinated by what you find out about our creek.
When you watch the show, the opening segment of the show, there's actually guys fishing along French Creek, and so what do you have there?
Well, I don't have anything, as you said, from French Creek.
Okay.
But I figured let's kind of stay with the theme, and we're going to do some salmon today.
Okay.
Not going to find, this is from the ocean, so you're not going to find that there. Very simple recipe. This was actually written to be done on the grill, so you could do that, but due to the fact that we have lots of snow covering the grill outside, we're not going to do that. We're going to cook it in the oven, which I have done already, so I know it turns out. Okay. So you're typically using 2 pieces. So I just have one here because I've got one marinating in the fridge to stick in the oven when we do that. I have the oven turned on to 400, and what I'm going to do is take about 1/4 of a cup of lemon juice.
Okay.
And about a tablespoon of oil. You don't need much. I zested a lemon, so about 2 teaspoons of lemon.
Okay.
My very favorite, I have it in the garden, rosemary. Okay, about 2 teaspoons of that. It's my favorite herb. And then a couple pinches of salt and pepper. A little bit more salt than pepper, but we've got them both in there. So, and I'm just going to mix that up. It's very aromatic. Of course, they can't smell it, but we sure can. And what we're going to do is we're just going to pour it over this salmon. You can brush it on, but it's pretty, liquefied. And then you put it in the refrigerator for 15 minutes.
Okay.
With fish, and I think we've talked about this before, you don't want to over marinate it because it breaks down the fiber.
Oh,
Especially
okay.
the acid, and we are using the lemon. So you're going to find that when I pull the other one out, it's going to have lost a little bit of color, but it's only been in there for about 15 minutes, so I'm not too worried. And we just let that marinate. I'm going to swap it out.
Okay.
Now, if you're doing this on the grill, you want to spray your grill before you turn it on.
Okay.
And then if you cook it with first the bottom side, you can slide the skin off the
Right.
bottom. And we can do that too. I did not spray this for the reason is I want that to stick
You
to
want the skin to kind of like peel off
Yep.
on its own. so-
Yeah, when we go to take it out. So we've been marinating this for about 15 minutes. So I just put some aluminum foil on
Okay.
a pan, and again we have The oven's set to 400. It's not going to take long. We're going to stick it in there and be about 15 minutes.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you a secret too about baking salmon that I learned. I didn't do it here. Let me set my timer. Do 15 and check it, and if it needs any longer, there we go. I learned something, and I'm not doing it here today. And the reason we're not doing it today is because we're on camera, and it's a little different. But if you want the perfect flaky salmon, you put it on the pan, you season it, you put it on the pan, you don't turn it on. You put the pan in the cold oven, turn it on to 400.
Oh.
25 minutes later, it
Okay.
is perfect.
Huh.
It is perfect. Now, 2 reasons. We're on camera, that's one reason. And this oven takes a little bit longer to heat up. So it's a little faster for us to do it this way.
Okay.
But it's perfect, and I've done it every time. So just a little tidbit of information.
Yeah, the other thing that's kind of fun about French Creeks, on the opening of the show, we've got guys fishing, on the creek. There's an eagle flying over us,
Yes.
that we got a shot of that, and it's like it's just everybody just on the way to work every day, crosses over a bridge and crosses over the creek, whatever. Really, I think folks don't even think about it, but it truly is a community asset.
It is a
something
community treasure, and I think
something phenomenal.
they call it that. It's one of the best places to see a bald eagle. We ride our bikes along the creek in some places, and we do see it. We've walked the creek. The kids have played in the creek. There's so many things. The canoeing, people are utilizing it. And if you notice, I said earlier, it being a clean creek, you notice the vegetation around it. And that is a part of the reason it is as clean as it is. It's called the buffer zone. And what it does is it has those trees on each side, so thick vegetation. If you go down there and you look, there's a lot of places you can't access it because it's so thick. But the roots from those trees clean the pollutants out before they actually, because all water ends up in the creek at some point from the ground. And they clean the water before it actually gets into the creek, which is a really good thing to have.
Oh, yeah.
When you have creeks that don't have that, like you were saying, the Monongahela, where we have how many people living along the edge, you don't have that buffer zone.
I don't know that people think of that as an asset,
Yeah.
like the
No.
people around here to think, think
do.
of French Creek. The fact that twice as many people voted for French Creek as the River of the Year versus the Monongahela, which, like I said, probably has 10 times more people that
Right.
live along that, in
Right.
that area than here. I'm not surprised though.
Yeah.
It really is something that people see differently.
Right.
I guess maybe if you live in a big city, you don't think of it the same way as you do
Probably
if you
not.
live in a smaller city or
More of a rural.
rural area.
Yeah.
The other thing too, I wanted to. We've done 3 different times. We've done the show traveling down the creek. Landon paddled the camera boat.
That's right. I forgot about that.
That was like 6 or 8 years ago or
It's been
something.
a while.
That was a long time ago. But he paddled the boat with our 2 cameramen in
right.
there. And nowadays we have more portable cameras and that kind of stuff. So we're going
Right.
to do it again. We're going to get some more cover a different spot. That one I think was we got in at that launch that's right by the Ernst farm there.
Yes.
And went down to Cochrane.
Right, that's Wilson Shoots, I believe.
Wilson
Is that
Shoots,
right there?
Wilson
Yeah.
Shoots, yeah, and went down to Cochrane. Other time we went from Sagertown down to Meadville, and then the more recent one, the one that was about 4 years ago, we started. This was unfortunately after the hotel burned down.
Right,
we
right.
went past there and started in Cambridge and went down to Venango, and so we'll figure out a different spot that we haven't hit yet, and hit that again this year.
Yeah.
But
I wouldn't mind being a part of that because to me it's fascinating. I am.
Well, I was just going to ask you if you wanted to jump in there.
I probably would do it because I am a major backer of French Creek. I feel it's a community treasure. I have always felt that way. I've always taught the kids that. My children understand that, know all the little tidbits of information I've shared over the years. They probably don't care anymore, but they've heard it and they know it. So
another fun thing too is when you're in a kayak or canoe or whatever, you're not getting totally worn out because you're kind of just going
with the flow.
You're just basically kind of steering.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to paddle hard and get a good exercise, you can do that. But
Right.
you're pretty much going just kind of going, and you're going 6 or 8 miles an hour or something like that with the water
It's
traveling.
really
And,
neat.
I was telling Brenda this story as we were talking about different animals and things you see when you're paddling on the creek, and I had a deer jump out in front of me and start swimming across the creek, and it saw me and got scared and ran back up on the bank.
My,
this happened several times, and
see.
it finally went all the way across and then got up out of the water and went, like
like I made it. I got away from you. Oh my! I'm sure she talked about this, but the number of species of mussels that live in the creek, which is another indication that you have a clean creek, is unbelievable. I think it's one of the only ones, I could be wrong, don't quote me on this, in Pennsylvania that has that number of mussels in it. And mussels are filter feeders.
Yeah.
So if your species of mussels are dying, your water's polluted, but we have so many, so it's not. So many fascinating things about French Creek when you learn about it. And I don't know if they talked about this with you, and I think this is interesting. Prehistorically, it ran in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Did she talk about that?
And the glaciers came and kind of turned it around.
Yes.
Yeah.
They kind of just carved a new path for it. Fascinating stuff.
I was looking at a map the other day, and it's like about 2/3 of Crawford County, it all drains into French Creek. You don't really think about that.
Yes.
But the little corner over Pymatuming goes that way, and the little corner over the Oil Creek over by Titusville goes that way. Everything else it's all, every little stream and everything ends up in French Creek.
And lots of tributaries. Yeah, for sure. Very, very interesting stuff.
We were talking, when I was talking with Brenda, we were talking about things like even putting fertilizer on your yard or on your garden or whatever. Don't overdo it, because that does leak down in the creek. Yeah, and that causes the growth of extra kind of things that kind of bog it down. And so that's a good point. Think about that. When you're taking care of your yard, when you're taking care of your garden outside or whatever, don't overdo it.
Yeah. Just do what you have to do, and
yeah.
For sure.
We were also talking about the wintertime part where all the salt's on the road, and that ends up in the creek.
It does.
And that can probably also be a negative factor. But
again, we have the buffer zone.
Yeah, right.
Which is very helpful in cleaning out. And again, you look at other creeks that might not be as clean. And believe it or not, us talking about it being clean, people don't believe that. They don't know that. Because you look at it and it looks dirty, but it's flowing.
The last time we did a trip, we had a big rainstorm, literally one day before, and it was very muddy because it was did kind of wash some mud down into the creek, and but all the other times it's been beautiful. I mean, it's been, and it's funny if you do the trip down the creek like in say July or August or whatever, you end up having to walk half the way. So I think we're going to shoot for maybe May or June.
Yes.
This time, so
after the melt.
After everything melted, yes.
We're hoping for the big thaw here soon, aren't we? I guess it's a little early to hope for that, but we only like.
We've had another pretty substantial winter again this year.
I think we're spoiled. I think that's what it is. I mean, it's been 4 years since we had that substantial snowfall, which was mostly north of us. We didn't get everything that they did in Erie and Buffalo, but we have had it pretty easy the past few winters.
I've been serving on the board of the rec complex now for a number of years, and unfortunately, the roof got torn apart over the pool, which unfortunately forced the shutdown of the pool here. And hopefully, the insurance is getting all worked out, and the replacement will get started here in the next few weeks. And they said it would take about 3 weeks or a month, something like that, to get it done. So, the bad part about that was the kids swimming. Now, thankfully, Allegheny's letting them, have their practice over at Allegheny, and they can have their meets over at Allegheny and so on. But probably by the time it's probably put back together, the season will be over.
It will be over.
I would think so.
Yeah.
But we'll have there was another talk. This was kind of interesting too about the roof. It's like, well, the original roof over the pool back in the 70s when it was built was like there were cables across, and they would kind of roll it across, and it would just puff up. It was just just like inflatable.
Right.
And that kind of wore out
over time.
I remember back when I was on the board way back in the 90s, that thing would tear every year, because at that point it was getting to be like 20 years old. So that's when the new roof that came with the metal structure underneath.
Right.
And they thought it would last for 25 years, which would be like 6 years from now. Well, and the storm came ripping through and just
when a storm
just
comes
shredded it.
through, nothing you can do.
And even like that park in Erie that had the indoor soccer field or whatever, it just got destroyed.
Right.
So
Yeah.
this wasn't anything that I guess I don't know if there's anything you can do about that or not.
No,
but
that's old man winter is gonna hit, and we have no say so in what happens. You know, you hunker down and hope and pray trees don't fall on your house, and the top of the swim mark doesn't rip off, but it can happen.
even the part that's even more unfortunate about that was the YMCA pool, again, was getting very old, and
Right.
it closed down literally just a few months beforehand.
Right.
So boom, all of a sudden the community's got no pool.
Right.
You know, and
It's tough.
and that's a great, I mean, that's a great fitness thing for a lot of folks. So that's their, they go several times a week, and that's their fitness thing.
Right, and like you said, the swim teams. You know,
Yeah,
what are the
yeah.
kids? The teams that actually go and have the meets there and their practices, and unfortunately,
Talking with Brenda, I guess there's going to be a bunch of activities, the River of the Year activities
the Year
this year.
activities.
So they're going to have. She was talking about a snorkeling thing, and some other
Well,
things.
that's
So
interesting.
We'll see what we can cover,
Yeah.
of those things this year. I think
Well,
that's going to be a lot of fun.
like I said, those hellbenders are shy and they're typically nocturnal, so I'm not sure you're going to find one. But they are fascinating. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting facts about, they respire through their skin. Just these little tidbits of information, and
She was telling me they live underneath flat
Flat
rocks.
rocks.
And I'm sure it's been 100 times, maybe even more, that I've been canoeing or kayaking or whatever on there. I literally have never seen one, and she
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
said, "Well, that's not surprising,
No.
because they're not."
they're shy. They're very shy of
Yeah.
people. You're not going to see them. You're lucky if you do.
But every time I go, it's like I see an eagle or I see some other large birds, like those
Right.
those cranes, whatever. Which I'm not sure which breed they are, but there are all
Right.
kinds of different large birds that you see all the time
You're
whenever you
bound
go.
to see wildlife there. There is just it's going to happen because it's a haven. They're all gathering there. I have seen an eagle swoop down for a fish.
Actually, I've seen that too.
That is
Yeah,
that
I've
is
seen
so
that too.
fascinating to see something. It takes your breath away because first of all you're realizing that it's an eagle. You see that white and and it's so large, and then to see it swoop down and then it comes out and it's got a fish in its mouth. You're like, whoa! I can't believe I just saw that. But it's possible to witness that at French Creek.
Well, see, French Creek, it's all about fishing.
It is. That's why we did salmon today. Not that we can find that in French Creek, but we're able to find some other fish.
I know it is popular. It's like whenever you are going out in the summertime, you're paddling down the creek, you're going to pass a whole bunch of fishermen every time you
are.
go,
Yeah.
and that's good.
It is.
That's a good thing.
It is. It is a good thing, and it's clean, so your fish are healthy.
I don't know how many lakes we have in Crawford County, but there's a lot of lakes. But
Right.
French Creek is kind of the river, the river.
The river
But,
that runs through it.
That's I'm glad we do the outdoor show, and I'm glad you do fish for us because
Yeah.
that's very popular. That's
It is very
popular
popular,
here in
and
Crawford
this
County.
is a healthy fish. You get your fatty 3 omegas. It's good for you, so it's always a good thing to do. We've got a few minutes left. Let me poke my head in there. Oh,
Wow.
that looks good. We're gonna give it those
And
3
it smells
minutes.
good.
Yeah, it does smell good.
Yeah, how about that? We've
but
talked
yeah.
about that before. We don't have smell as part of our show.
Smell-o-vision is
We'll have to
not-
work. We'll have to work on that. I don't know how you do that.
We talk about if we could invent that, I think we would make a mint. But there's no such thing at this point, and I don't think it'll work.
So we'll come up with a different piece of the creek to travel down this summer. I have an extra kayak. I can
I
let
borrowed
you
it
let you
before.
go.
I
Yes,
would
yes.
like to do that. I really would.
Good.
And be a part of that. And then we'll do some other fish after that show,
Okay.
and
Okay.
give our viewers another good recipe. We always like to do that.
I remember I was taking the dogs out for a run, and now this was on Woodcock Creek, not on French Creek, but Woodcock Creek runs into French Creek
Yeah,
and goes.
it's a tributary.
And Butch runs, and I look up, and he's flushed a bald eagle. I'm like, Butch, you probably don't want to be flushing a bald eagle. I think it'd rip your head off.
They're
there.
still protected too, so you don't want to hurt one.
So yeah, it's funny. Just randomly, you don't really see eagles around very much, but it seems like when you're around the water, you seem like you see them all the time.
You do. In Crawford County, there's actually more sightings than a lot of other places. And we are more rural, and we have French Creek, so that shouldn't be surprising. Around here in Vernon, there's a few sightings over on the back roads by some of the farms.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but definitely at the creek, if you go there a few times, you're going to see them at least one of those times that you're there.
I know over at Canada, I think you were with us over there. There was a eagle's nest, and it seemed like they had babies every year and whatever. I guess the father eagle got hit by a truck or something, got run over, and mother's moved down to the sewer plant now, which is kind of funny.
That's a little scary.
We've seen her flying around over by the sewer plant all the
I
time.
hope she's not eating anything out of there.
Well, yeah.
Because, don't bring your babies back any food from there. That wouldn't be good, but that's a shame. But, that's such is life. But yes, I do remember that. I remember that nest.
Even the for several years after the father eagle, unfortunately got run over, the nest kind of hung around it, and it's kind of like disintegrated since then. But that was, oh boy, probably 5 or 6 or 7 years or whatever that there were like babies every year, and you can see the little heads popping up, wanting mom and dad to bring me something to eat, and all that kind of stuff. And
there's we have in Erie, the Tom Ridge Environmental Center. And they have I go every year to see it. It's called Mysteries of the Great Lakes. And they do, one part of it, they show a bald eagle's nest and the babies in it. Actually, they compare 2 different nests. And it kind of relates to what you just said, because I had said, I hope she's not feeding them anything, because it showed 2 different, let me just stop that. It showed 2 different nests, and one was thriving and one wasn't. And what they did is they followed the mother to see what she was feeding the babies. And the one that was thriving was feeding it the right things, mice out of the field, and et cetera, et cetera. And the one that didn't make it, none of the babies actually make it. And I'm giving away the story if you go to see it, but I won't tell you any more about that. They don't make it because she's feeding them lamprey. And lamprey are bottom feeders. And there's still some heavy metals in the bottom of the Great Lakes.
Right.
And so what she was feeding them was poisoning them. So it was,
Wow.
but you get to see that up close in the nest, like you said, the head's poking out of the eggs.
That's interesting.
It's really
How
kind of
about
cool. So if you ever go up there, that's a small. I gave you some information. It's a small tidbit of the whole video, which is it's really fascinating. So shall we pull that out?
Sure.
We'll check it. I didn't bring down my oven mitts, but we can use this.
You want me to do it?
Well, I'm going to set one down right here. I think I can get it. Let's see. Oh, look at that, Dwayne.
Oh, wow.
Look at that.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So, it smells really good. I don't want to use that one because I touched the raw. So if I'm good at this, then let's see if I can get it to work. Because I didn't spray it, because I want it to come off of, oh yeah.
That's working.
Yes, it is. I want to look underneath it. Let's see. Oh yeah, it's working.
It's just like the sliding right off the skin there.
Look at that.
How about that?
I did it. I think a little bit is attached. I'm going to get another plate. Put that on there, and then I'll break some up and we'll taste it.
Yay.
Pretty simple. Smell that. It smells great.
It smells wonderful.
So let me just, nice and flaky. Here you go. All right. Let's see how we did. Lemon and rosemary.
That's excellent. That is
Great,
wonderful.
Great combination. And
And you can use this on other fish, on other breeds of fish. You could.
you could do it on a whitefish. And you can do it on the grill. Like I said, this was originally made for the grill. The one thing that was different for the grill is they said to get some long strands of rosemary, put them underneath where the flame is,
okay.
so that smell comes up. You could also slice some lemons and grill them on there also, and then you could plate it with the grilled lemons and the rosemary on top when you're done.
Okay.
But this is light and flaky and just really nice combination of.
Pretty easy to do, and it tastes wonderful.
Thank you. I love it.
Well, Lisa, thank you for the excellent recipe
You're
as
welcome.
always.
Thank you for having me. This is a favorite of mine because I'm a French Creek fan, I guess you could call me. And
also a big thanks to Brenda Costa for
Absolutely.
being our expert and talking about all the kind of things. And like I said, we're going to do a whole lot more about the creek over this year. And thank you also to the folks at home for joining us today on Crawford County Outdoors. And we'll see you again. Thanks.